Hey guys, and welcome to Quality Shot. It's the Ashes. The Ashes is amongst us. It's 2 days to go, actually. So, recording this on the 6th of December. And I'm with Jack from the Cricket Podcast. And if you aren't aware of them, you should be, and you're not really a proper cricket fan. But no, in all seriousness, you should go and check it out. And of course, we'll put the description to the channel in our description, even. The links there as well. But Jack, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm not too bad, mate. I'm looking forward to the cricket. It was nice for us England fans to have like a couple of weeks downtime between the T20 World Cup and now. If you're an India fan or a New Zealand fan, it was like 48 hours turnaround or something like that. So I've actually enjoyed just stepping back from cricket for a couple of weeks, getting my energy back together, and looking forward to what could be a good series.
Yes, what could be a good series. Yes, exactly as you said. We'll dive into that a little bit. Yeah, the turnaround for some of the teams was crazy. I mean, what was it? New Zealand played in the final, and then they were literally, as you said, 48 hours later. Some of the players in that final were playing a bilateral series, which is just crazy. I don't know why they scheduled that, but anyways, right. Let's dive into it first. I guess look at England because I'm sure you got a lot of thoughts on that. England haven't announced their team, unlike Australia, where I know Australia, I think it was Justin Langer said they weren't going to announce the team before. And Pat Cummins just came right out with it in the one of the presses, which is hilarious. So yeah, I'm not sure whether that was just a mistake or what. But Root said he will not be giving the 11, but did kind of hint a little bit towards Jack Leach, saying that he might feature because the Gabba, which is where the first test is going to be, is a good place to bowl spin, apparently, in quotation marks. And apparently there's a lot of options on the table, including, I guess, Pope or Bairstow being one of the choices. And then the bowling options, I know they're looking at, I'm assuming Broad, Woakeswood, Robinson. I'm assuming Anderson's are like nailed on pretty much. But first of all, what do you think about England's chances? I think is the main thing. We'll get into that first.
Are you going to go with the big question first up? I actually am not particularly hopeful. I think this England team aren't particularly good at batting. They're coming up a team against an opposition side that are particularly good at bowling. And then if you flip it round and you look at England's bowlers versus the Aussie batters. Now, the Aussie batters, they're not the best batting unit in the world. They do have Smith and Labuschagne, which helps. And maybe Warner's back as well. We don't know that for sure, at least in Test cricket. But they're not awesome. But that England bowling lineup, it looks very similar to the bowling lineup they took in, 2018-19 or 17-18. I always get the years mixed up. I know 2018 was one of the 2 years. And I think that there might be some pain coming their way over the 5 matches. On the plus side for England, the England cricket team, and maybe the minus side for neutrals and Australians, it does look like it's going to be quite rainy and wet in Australia over the next 6 weeks. So I think they should be able to burgle a couple of draws. If I was gonna make a bet, 3-0 is where I would go. 3-0 to Australia.
Okay.
But
very optimistic.
Yeah, 3-0 on a couple of rain-offs. There are, having said all that, there are some match winners in that England team.
Yeah.
Ben Stokes being back's a huge boost. Not only is he England's second best batter, but he balances the team really nicely. It means they can bat down to 7 with Josh Buttler likely to come in there. It means they can bring in sort of one of those kind of you can give a player like Ollie Pope slightly less responsibility by batting him at 6 and maybe give him a chance to find his feet in the series. Root has been spectacular for a year. Had one of the greatest years genuinely one of the greatest years in Test history. He's been fantastic. He scored hundreds in India, Sri Lanka, and England. It's insane. And then with the ball, I like the look of Ollie Robinson in Australia. So you never know. It's cricket. It's sport. Things can go. Weird stuff can happen. Maybe if it is a bit wet, that'll bring Anderson and Broad into the games, Woakes into the games. There's the match under lights. If you get lucky with the toss in that match, they might win a match or two. But 3-0 is what I would tentatively say is the most likely score.
a lot of banking on El Nino. I think they call it El Nino, don't they? The weather front that's just destroying Australia at the moment in terms of a lot of wet pitches. But apparently, Brett Lee said that it drains really well, the Gabba, so no issues whatsoever. It doesn't matter how much it's going to rain, which I think was a bit tongue in cheek, to be fair. For England, then you mentioned about Ben Stokes, so I guess that's a good place to start. Obviously, there was a lot of doubt initially about him playing. I think a lot of people thought he wasn't going to play because of his thumb, and also he took a break because of mental issues, which is understandable. It seems that the main issue, though, recently was the finger or the thumb, whatever it was, that was broken. But now he's back fit. There's a video of him in the nets batting, and people are like, oh, he might be coming back. And then he broke it, and it was like, this is a game changer. And I think it's definitely, obviously, a plus for England, no doubt. I do think there's maybe a little bit too much. I want to say there's a lot of weight on that decision, or I guess that inclusion of Ben Stokes, but I think that probably proves maybe how fragile the England batting lineup is a little bit, because you said he's the second best batsman, which he is. The numbers prove that. He's got a test average of 35, which is the second highest after Root, who's I think now touching 50, so which is phenomenal. But is that the biggest issue for England? Is just the lack of batting depth and the fact that obviously Australia have got one of the best bowling attacks out there with Pat Cummins and Hazelwood and Stark when he's on form, which we'll get into later. But is it just a case of like these guys are going to have to come in and other people need to chip in? They can't just rely on Root and Stokes to get them out of trouble every time.
Yeah, I mean, I think fundamentally, if you go through this England batting lineup, almost every single one of those players has got a huge glaring flaw in their game. And everyone knows about it. Everyone will be able to prepare for it. And I just can't see over 5 matches, or even over 2 innings in 1 match, how that isn't exposed by the Aussie bowling lineup. If you want to go through it, Burns, is he up to the challenge that Nathan Lyon will give him bowling off spin to the left-hander? I don't know. He was in 2019. He scored a couple of hundreds. He had a good series. Will he do it away from home? Question marks. Hamid, anyone who can bowl fast at the stumps gets him out. It's there are probably questions around his capability of playing the short ball as well. And that, Australia have got 2 bowlers, at least 2 bowlers will bowl over 90 miles an hour consistently. That's not great. Dawid Malan, is he a test quality number 3? Big questions there, I think. Less of a glaring flaw, and maybe just a player isn't quite up to it. Root, brilliant. Stokes, pretty good. I mean, you say his test average is 35. That being the second best in the England team does show the sort of problem. Yeah. 35 is decent. It's very decent if you can also bowl, and your bowling average is 32. But for a number 5 in international cricket, it's not. You're not blown away by that, really, are you? 6, it's Ollie Pope or Bairstow. Pope can't score runs anywhere that isn't the Oval. Bairstow will get out to anyone who can bowl at the stumps. Then you've got Butler, who's the 3rd best batter in the England side. Decent player, but not a hugely high. I'm not expecting, Josh Butler to score 450 runs over the series and leave him like format, right? Get 300. Yeah.
I mean, he's a phenomenal white ball player, isn't he? But he's just the red ball stuff. He's not quite that same force to be reckoned with, I don't think, is he?
Yeah. So I think all of those players have just got problems that are very easy to target. And that's if Australia don't make basic errors, and Australia almost have to choose not to target these things for England to have any chance of being successful with the bat. Then that situation lumps loads of pressure onto Root and Stokes, who are going to have amazing series. Root stood up in against India over the summer, and even Sri Lanka earlier in the year. And he was able to carry the team, but it's can you expect him to do that 5 matches down under? He played 9 tests in Australia, never got 100. Decent average. I think his average is touching 40, but he seems to be weaker there than in some of the other places he plays. Maybe he'll bounce back. Maybe he'll revert to the mean and he'll score 700 runs. But I think England will need something like that from Root, and they'll probably need 400 runs from Stokes, and they'll probably need Burns to play at least as well as he did in 2019 to have a batting unit that's going to threaten to put 400 on the board and actually put Australia under pressure.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. There was a weird rumor going around that maybe they should try Stokes at 3, which I thought was really weird, considering that potentially England would be one down after they could easily be one down after 3 overs, because that's just how fragile the opening pair has been for quite some time. What's your thoughts on it? My thoughts is that's a very strange, and why would they do that? Expose them so early on. What are your thoughts on it?
Again, it speaks to this weakness that England have with their batting. They know it's bad, and they know that to over 5 matches, it's going to be exposed. And so I think some people are thinking, we need to try a Hail Mary here. We need to try a tactic that Australia just won't have seen coming. Get Stokes in earlier against the new ball. It probably won't move around as much. It's not much of a risk as doing it in England, yeah. And Stokes has got a fantastic batting technique, particularly against pace bowling. So I think he could sort of do it. The reason I wouldn't want him batting at number 3 is because you need overs out of him. If you're going to be on the flip side, if you're going to be successful with the ball, you need to be a relentless 4 or 5 man attack. You need to bowl short, aggressive spells. Particularly if you're quick, you can't be letting Anderson and Wokes and Broad. They just don't have the arsenal there to bowl 25 overs a day. They'll be exhausted. The bowling will be poor. You have to be more punchy than that, and so Stokes is going to have to take on 10 overs a day to make that happen. If he's batting 3 whilst also shouldering a decent burden with the ball, just back in the team, he'll be exhausted, and then probably a weaker player as a result as well. I mean, Jacques Kallis did it, didn't he, for years for South Africa?
Yeah, he did.
A day and average 56. He was a freak. Most people can't do that. He
didn't get injured that much either, I don't think, Jacques Kallis as well. Ben Stokes had there's probably a lot of luck involved. I think the fact that obviously Jacques Kallis was batting so hard the order and bowled, as you said, a lot of overs, and not just in Test matches and ODIs as well. He was. There weren't many matches where he didn't bowl. It wasn't like he just sometimes used to bowl. He bowled pretty much every single match. But he was a freak.
If you think back as well, Kallis was a bit more of I would say a skill bowler than Stokes. Stokes, you don't throw Stokes the ball and expect him to swing it both ways and sort of nibble it around hard length. You give Stokes a ball and he bangs it in short and in the high 80s, and he tries to force someone into playing a bad shot with the old ball. He adds quite a lot of value to England doing that. I think he did quite successfully against South Africa a couple of years ago. Almost like a poor man's Neil Wagner. Do you get what I mean there? He can fulfill a little bit of a role by being a bit different. Kallis was a bit more of a skill bowler. He was bowling 80 miles an hour, and it was about movement and line and length with Kallis, which is probably. And, I'm not an international fast bowler. I'm not speaking from experience here. But it's probably an easier thing to do, isn't it? To be bowling at James Anderson's pace. Yeah. Than it is to be bowling 85. Because if Stokes bowls at 80 miles an hour, he just will not be effective. I
agree. Yeah, no, that's a very good point, actually. And I think that's, you give me an idea for a video, so I'm going to have to do that at some point. Stokes and Kallis comparison would be quite a good one. So we mentioned obviously Stokes, and then you clearly said that they're going to have to decide between Pope and Bairstow. Who would you go with and why? I mean, Pope, as you said, he has a very good record at the Oval, but he has struggled to get substantial runs. Bairstow has got some runs in Australia in recent years, but has struggled generally in Test cricket for a few years now. And they just love picking him all the time. So, what do you think? Who do you think they will go with, and who would you go with?
I think they will go with Bairstow based on experience. England like to have players with lots of caps in the bank. It's something their analysts have written about a few times. They think that you do need an amount of experience to be a successful cricket team. And I think they'll be worried about Pope playing in conditions that he will not have batted in before, in a really high-profile series, with a checkered history. I think they'll play it safe and go with Bairstow. From their point of view, if Bairstow fails, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah,
it's. I think there's still quite a lot of hopes riding on the on the Ollie Pope bandwagon. Like he's in theory, a potential England captain, someone who could prop up the batting order for a long time to come. I think they'd be a bit worried of exposing him to, well, Australian conditions, him having a terrible series, him having to drop him probably halfway through it, and and I think that they tend to be a little bit risk averse, so I think they'll go Bairstow. I personally would probably go with Pope, though. It is a tricky one because both of them, what you're really sort of buying into if you pick Pope or Bairstow is like potential runs, Bairstow has proven over the last 2-3 years that he doesn't have the game for Test cricket at the moment. At the same time, he's dominating white ball cricket. He's almost in a league of his own as an opener in white ball cricket. Now, if you're the England team, you're probably thinking in Australia, Kookaburra ball won't move around as much, a bit more similar, be a bit similar to what he, or to the type of bowling that he's able to dominate in white ball cricket. Batting 5 or 6 in the order, he could come off here big time. Like he's clearly got the talent to play international cricket. It's not that he doesn't have the reaction time or something like that. So that's the carrot with Bairstow. And with Pope, it's this extraordinary average in first-class cricket, and it's all the shots, and it looks beautiful.
It's technical, they're buying into his technique and how he looks. And Bairstow, I feel like Bairstow was probably technically, from a Test standard point of view, slightly better before. But then as soon as he, I guess, revolutionized his game in the white ball format, that then brought in some defensive frailties, because it's very hard to just switch your technique and from
it's massively hard.
And he plays 2 of them, right? That's why it's so hard. You don't see many all format players who succeed like so well in each single format, which is and
he's sort of being asked to do something very different as well. Where you see players sort of cross formats, it's often in white ball cricket or in T20, they'll be the anchor players. They're not opening the batting, trying to strike at 150, and then going into the Test side and trying to be the glue at number 5, scoring at a strike rate of 55. It's in England half the time. It's a completely different mindset, game, approach. Different type of preparation you'll have to go through. Different types of bowling you have to face in the nets. Different game plans, scoring shots. Like how much time do you have to be both those cricketers? No, I can't think, off the top of my head, of a player who is as explosive in white ball cricket that then comes into a Test side and can average 40. It's a pretty difficult thing to do. Virat Kohli, Babar Azam, Rizwan, Joe Root when he plays T20 cricket, that's a bit more transferable. It's sort of an upping of the tempo for those guys, right? When they play white ball cricket, they're playing the same shots, but the tempo's up. Bairstow in Test matches, he doesn't bomb people over their head for 6 in the first over. Like it's not. He's playing completely different shots in the 2 formats. It's probably a testament to him that he's able to even be decent at Test match cricket, bearing in mind the what he's doing in white ball cricket and how different it is. That probably speaks to his talent level. But I think it's very difficult. And then on Pope, I do think he's got a higher upside than Bairstow. And we go back to that sort of point about batting Stokes at 3 because England need a little something funky, something weird to come off for them. I think there's more chance of Pope scoring 400 runs over the series than there is Bairstow. I think the Australian bowlers will have a plan, and it'll be the same plan that they've used against Bairstow for the last 10 matches they played against him.
Yeah,
and I think they'll be able to expose him. Pope, his weakness, is spin bowling. He's not international level spin bowling. He doesn't play it very well. With the protection of players like Root around him and Butler around him, it might be difficult for Australia to pin him down and just bowl loads and loads and loads of spin at him. If he can just survive Lyon, then he'll have opportunities to score against the other bowlers. In India, he was unable to. He couldn't survive Ashwin, and he couldn't survive Jadeja, and he couldn't survive Akshar Patel.
To be fair, none of the batsmen could.
It's a little bit different, isn't it? Yeah, like going to the Gabba, pretty flat pitch, Kookaburra ball, Nathan Lyon versus those boys on some of those pitches in India. So I think I'd be more hopeful for Pope, but I think they'll pick Bairstow.
Yeah, I agree. I think they'll probably pick Bear. So yeah, I'd go for Pope as well. I just think, as you said, he's got a higher upside, and I guess you're maybe investing a little bit in the future. But there is, of course, as you said, the the issue with potentially breaking his confidence if he doesn't get many runs and having to drop him halfway through, which isn't ideal. On the bowling front for England, I feel like they've got a few decisions to make. I mean, obviously they go the tried and tested. They go with Anderson and Broad, which obviously Australia will probably expect, and then I guess it's do they go with Robinson, right, and then Leach, and then
I think
obviously
Robinson is the most important bowler that England have.
yeah,
In this series. He's just the height he bowls from and the consistency with which he can hit a line of length means that even if doesn't look super threatening, I think he'll be able to pin down some of the Australian players and force them into making mistakes.
he's a Hazelwood, isn't he? That's what.
Yeah, he's a very similar bowler. Yeah, and I think that will be, crucial. I think he'll have to bowl a lot of overs, and I think he'll have to be as good as he was against India in the summer for England to function. I think the second most important bowler is Leach. I think they have to pick him because they need somebody who can chew through some overs.
Yeah.
Him being a left arm,
do you think he'll fare?
He'll be all right. I think. Yeah, I think he'll be all right. Him being a left arm spinner as well, it helps against Steve Smith, whose only weakness in Test cricket, and I say weakness, I think he averages 40 against left arm spin, and it's like 70 against everything else. So it's not, it's not a disaster having Leach inside, and if he is able to settle into a rhythm and control the games or control the scoring rate, I think he could be absolutely crucial. Australia will know that though, and I wouldn't be stunned if the first over Leach bowls, someone's coming down the pitch to him and trying to put him in the stands. I think they'll really want to put him under pressure and try and force Root into not bowling him and rotating back through the seamers. So you're getting sort of 3-4 spells out of Robinson in a day, and Stokes is up to 15 overs a day instead of 10. And I think that will really wear him out. But if Leach can settle in, maybe pick up a couple of wickets, get some confidence going. We've seen he's a decent bowler. He went to India. He was pretty good in India. I don't really understand why England didn't pick him all summer. It seemed pretty obvious from afar that they were going to need Leach to be a bit of a player in Australia. Giving him no cricket for 7 months isn't an ideal, preparation. But I expect him to play, and I expect him to do okay. Then I go Wood and one of Anderson or Broad. I think. Yeah. I don't think they'll both play. And I think Wood being a bowler who he's capable of bowling 95 miles an hour is good, because you never really know what will happen when someone bowls 95 miles an hour. It's a nice thing it's a nice option to have. Anderson Broad effectively will be doing the same thing in Australia. They'll be very tight, but I don't know if they'll be that threatening. I suppose they could go Wokes instead of Wood if they want a longer batting lineup. Wokes is a good batter, but I don't know. But he always seems to be an unfortunate one, Wokes, doesn't he?
Yeah,
just squeezed out of the side.
I guess he's a bit metronomic. He's metronomic like Ollie Robinson, I guess. He's a similar type of bowler. Obviously, they do slightly different things, but in terms of the end product, which is putting on a line and length, getting the ball to either kind of swing away from the bats, which is Wokes, and then potentially nibble in. Ollie Robinson is mainly seam, kind of gets it to nibble off the seam both ways, but they're both trying to put it, on a perfect line length, whereas Wood is completely different. He's just the aggressor. He'll come in, he'll bowl short, he'll bowl quick, and he's very, very different. As you said, than Anderson Broad. Again, like very different in their specific approach in terms of like what they do, but in terms of the end product, it's quite similar. So I guess they don't want a bit the samey, right? Throughout the whole lineup, which I guess then would make sure that you don't have that.
And the other thing Wood does is he gives you threat once the ball gets old. So there's a stat in Australia, if you like a stat, and it's when the ball's younger than 40 overs old. I think it's 40 overs old. It doesn't actually matter that much how fast you bowl. You can be threatening in the low 80s, or as threatening in the low 80s as you are if you're bowling in the 90s. After the ball gets old, though, those bowlers who can bowl in the 90s, they stay threatening. Their average stays around 30, so they're still in the game. People who bowl sub 85, their average just goes up and up and up and up because that ball doesn't offer you anything, and you get hit around the park. That's where Wood, could be invaluable. Another thing that is interesting here, though, I know Robinson's speeds look low, but because he's bowling from like a high height, the ball actually comes through quicker, or feels quicker when you're batting than a short man bowling 80 miles an hour. Robinson, another great thing about him is that he tends to be better after the first 15, 20 overs of a new ball. So you'd think English seamer, traditionally you're most deadly in the first 20 overs and then your effectiveness tails off. Robinson's actually sort of made a bit of a career out of being an excellent first change bowler. That's the other reason I think he'll be absolutely crucial for England's chances, and sort of package within that as well. I think it's nice if England can get Wood in the side to lighten that workload on Robinson and give them an extra threat as the day goes on.
No, agreed. To am I getting the feeling that you're thinking they're going to go with, and you would go with Leach, one of Anderson or Broad, and then Robinson and Wood, right?
That's what I would do.
Yeah. Who would you open with then if that was the case? So obviously, one of Anderson and Broad opens. Who's at the other end?
I think you go Robinson. Yeah, I think you do short spell of Robinson. Maybe get a short spell of Wood in early as well. So say it's Anderson, bowl 7 overs of Anderson up front. Because as soon as the ball gets old, it'll be hard work for him. But he doesn't have to bowl until we won't have to bowl for 3 hours after that. So hopefully he can recover. And then rotate the other 2 seamers early, 3-4 overs each.
No, I agree.
I think it could be tricky. I mean, the other thing that we haven't discussed is that there is the possibility they don't pick Bairstow or Pope. They move Butler up to 6, bring Wokes in at 7, and have 5 frontline bowlers plus Stokes. And they have done that. I think they did that against Pakistan in 2020 in the COVID series.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
I think that's a bit risky. I think that leaves the batting a bit light, and we've talked about the weakness. But if they are worried about workloads and stuff, that is another potential solution to this problem. And you do wonder a little bit as well whether there's much difference between Wokes and Pope or Bairstow in terms of output with the bat. But it could go really quirky. They could go really quirky. I think it's England. They're safe. They're conservative. They won't do that. But they might have had to think about doing it.
It's so funny because you say England is safe and conservative, but the white ball side of England is the complete opposite. It's the risk at all costs, and we're happy to just roll the dice and do really weird things. But when it comes to Test cricket, it's like the complete flip opposite, which is really funny. What have you got? You got in the ODIs, you've got Bairstow and Roy, and then you've got Hamid and Burns, right? Couldn't be two larger contrasting pairs. It's hilarious. I was going to ask you about the keys to winning for England, but I think we've touched upon it. I think you mentioned it obviously about runs for obviously Stokes and Root, and then with the ball as well. I think they're going to have to. I think Leach will have a key role to play. If he performs quite well, then I would imagine England will be in a pretty good position. So you'd imagine the seamers will have some success as well. So I think he'll be quite key, I'd imagine, for them. In terms of Australia, I mean, from your point of view, we'll start off with obviously the most glaring omission, and we'll go to the 11 in a second. But obviously, no Tim Payne, resigned because of scandal from years ago, and now it's just come out. I'm not sure why, but I think it was leaked by someone, and he knew it was coming out. In terms of, I'm not going to ask you specifically what your opinion on that, but more about how it affects Australia from a cricketing point of view. Will they miss his captaincy, do you think? And will they miss his keeping / batting? I mean, will they miss anything? Or will it just be a case of actually, you know what? This was... I think a lot of people thought it was going to come at some point, just not now. Probably in maybe 6 months to a year. Anyways, and it's just, time to move on anyway. It's not going to change too much. And actually might potentially strengthen their keeping / batting as well.
I think it's a really interesting one. I think, from what I understand, and I don't watch hours and hours of Shield cricket, so I don't know this. From what I understand, Tim Payne's rated as the best wicketkeeper that Australia have. So whoever they bring in instead of him is probably not going to be as good a keeper. I don't think that will have a huge impact on the series. Everyone stands back in Australia anyway most of the time, don't they? Because there's so much pace bowled. It's not like this is happening in India, and you might need to be up to the stumps all the time. Batting wise, it's not really a secret that he wasn't the best wicketkeeper batter of all time, is it? Is Alex Carey much better? Probably a bit marginal. I don't really rate Carey too highly. Was he a 31-year-old keeper who had a little bit of a go in the ODI side, but didn't quite crack it? I think it's probably, in terms of cricketing ability, pretty neutral. I think Carey will add a bit more with the bat than Payne, but not an awful lot. And might be a bit worse with the gloves, but not catastrophically bad. Where it might benefit England is, leadership changes are destabilising. There'll be players who won't quite know what to expect from Pat Cummins' leadership. Now, he's been around the team for a long time. He's been vice captain. I think he's captain at state level, hasn't he? So he's not a completely unknown quantity. Like he's very established player in that side. But it is a different relationship, I think, when you're a captain and you're elevated to that leadership role, and we don't know whether he'll be good at it. We don't know how the players will respond to it. We know that there's already been a bit. There's a bit. Everyone it's an open secret that a lot of the players don't like Langer that much. So it's a possibility that some kind of a fissure could open up there with a change of captain. I think Langer and Payne are probably quite tight. Will Cummins and Langer function the same way? I've spoken a lot here to say I think it's reasonably marginal. I thought it was, I thought it was a bit sad the way it ended for Payne.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it happened quite a few years ago. Obviously, it's not right what happened, but I think the fact that obviously he's exonerated, whether that was right or wrong, who knows? But I think it's a bit harsh to be judged, and it's a little bit, I guess, like the tweets that come out from like 15 years ago, and they were like 17, 18, and then they get judged on that when now they're probably not that person. That's not what they're like. So, I
don't know. Do you deserve to lose your career effectively?
Yeah. Over a picture.
On the flip side, if I went into the office, but if I sent a photo of my Johnson to a colleague, I'd be gone. Yeah. So it's not. We don't actually know the full story there and how consensual it was and so on. So it doesn't really help to speculate, and it's it is what it is. But it does feel like a bit of a sad end. Tim Payne got a lot of grief from England fans. I never really understood why. I thought he seems to be a reasonably genuine fella on the
from the pitch. Test anyway, the Test series. He's from the Amazon Prime Test series. He seems like a pretty nice bloke, but who knows? I mean, it's a weird one, but he's definitely done a lot for Australia from a cricketing point of view, anyway, and captaining as well, stabilised them in a very strange time, very torrid time, really, with Steve Smith and obviously Warner not being in the side, so just got absolutely shunted into there, really, and did a pretty damn good job as a captain anyway, that's for sure. So I'm sure he'll be missed in some capacity. But Pat Cummins, I'm excited about as a fast bowling captain. They're so scarce nowadays, aren't they? I mean, people run away from the like a suggestion of a fast bowling captain because I don't know if they're worried that they're going to bowl the overs or they're going to hog the one end, or they don't know how to captain apparently. But he's been, as you said, vice captain for a long time, and I was a massive advocate for once the captaincy became available, like just chuck him in there. Well, what's your thoughts on Steve Smith being vice captain? Do you think some people are saying, it's good, obviously, get him in there because he's been captain previously, he'll give good input, or is it, we need to make a clean break? You're still on the side, but put someone else as vice captain, put Labuschagne, for example.
I don't think anyone as annoying as Labuschagne could be a captain. So I just don't think. I think Smith's the obvious call, isn't he? If Cummins misses a test, if Cummins gets injured, it would be weird if Steve Smith wasn't the captain if they went to somebody else. It's also probably a little bit of an admission from Cricket Australia that they probably got it wrong with the 1 year ban and the total meltdown they had over Sandpaper Gate. The further we get from that, the more ridiculous it seems in the first place that they took the captaincy away from him, let alone banned him for an entire year. I like it. I suppose the thing you could say, I don't know if he's a fantastic captain. I don't think it's.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. When you hear him speak, he seems like someone who is very knowledgeable on cricket. He seems like, he lives and breathes. We hear all about him. Obviously, shadow batting, etc. He knows his stuff clearly, but I just wonder what he's like as a specific leader, right? Like, can he roll the team up? For example, we see, specific people doing it, and Ponting, for example, does it. For example, I know I've heard loads of stories with him doing it with the IPL teams or whatever, and he obviously would have done it with Australia on numerous occasions. And I know Payne has that similar type of attitude as well. We saw it in the series and stuff. But can you imagine Smith in the changing room, really like giving them a bollocking? I feel like he wouldn't, right?
No, I think Smith's a lead by example kind of guy, isn't he? Exactly, I think you're inspired by Steve Smith because he's the sort of person who can score a bazillion runs in England and also grind out a century on a spinning deck in Kanpur or wherever he did it. Was it Kanpur?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah.
Pune, maybe back in the day. Yeah. It's the famous century scored against India. Like those moments, if you're a player and you're watching them and you're seeing him help your team in that way, they've got to be quite inspiring. But I don't see him delivering the victory speech or as you say, reading people the riot act if things don't go well.
Yeah, agreed. But Pat Cummins, we'll see how he goes captaining. I'm sure there'll be a lot of scrutiny under his fielding positions and all sorts. You'd imagine after the first few tests, no doubt. The lineup, I want to get your thoughts. And obviously they released it. So Warner, Marcus Harris, Labuschagne, Smith, Travis Head, Cameron Green, Carey, Cummins, Stark, Lyon and Hazelwood. I think the two areas that people thought there might be a bit of movement was potentially Richardson in for Stark, because Richardson's had a very good Sheffield Shield season. Stark, I think his test figures this year, I could be mistaken, but from what I've seen, I think he averages just under 100 with the ball. I think it's something like 90 something with the ball. So he's been pretty poor. I know he's had some personal grievances. I think potentially his father or father-in-law is really ill. So I think he's had a bit going on, to be fair, outside of cricket as well. But hasn't been fantastic in the Test arena for the whole year, whereas Jai Richardson has been really good in the Sheffield Shield. And then similarly, they chose Travis Head over the more experienced, I guess, Usman Khawaja, who averages 40, I think, in Test cricket. Travis Head, I think, averages 29. But in terms of if we look at the averages against England even, Khawaja only averages 29, and same with Travis Head. So they're kind of much the muchness. They're I'm looking at that. Are you surprised? What would you have done?
Khawaja v Head is very similar to our Bairstow v Pope debate, I think, that we had earlier, except that Head's maybe a little bit older than Pope.
Yeah, he is. Yeah,
I think Australia. I don't know. It's a bit of a tie. I'd probably have gone the way they did. I don't think Travis Head or Usman Khawaja is the deciding factor. In this series. From their personal points of view, I think it is quite a big series for Travis Head now. He's not quite done it in Test cricket yet. There are rumours that he's a bit worked out. He can't face bowling from around the wicket, so England expect England to target that. But if he can do okay, then I reckon he'll be nailed down in that Australian lineup for the foreseeable future.
I agree.
And I think maybe Australia,
doesn't he?
Yeah, that's what Australia obviously really want him to succeed, because then they've got a 3-4-5 that's set for the next probably 4 years, probably until the next Ashes Down Under, when maybe Steve Smith will be getting on a little bit. But yeah, I think that's what they'll want there. I suspect that maybe a bigger weakness will be Marcus Harris at the top of the order.
Yeah, I was going to say, so Usman Khawaja, right? I think recently hasn't been opening the batsman for Queensland, which is his domestic team, but he has for a number of years, obviously, for Australia and also Queensland. He averages 69, and some people are saying, like, maybe they're like, as you said, go with Travis Head, but chuck Khawaja in instead of Marcus Harris, because I feel like Marcus Harris is a potential weak link. And again, for him, I feel like it's make or break. They give him a lot of chances. If he doesn't get runs, I mean, I can't. I feel like he's not going to be in the side for at least a few years.
Yeah, I think it might be the end of days. I mean, again, at the top of the order, that one of those positions is sort of held for Will Pukowski if he can ever get over that they really want him to be the next decade's Australian opening batter. So yeah, I don't know. I think with that in mind, knowing that it's a bit of a placeholder position, maybe Khawaja is a better bet. Someone who's got a little bit more experience, will have played in Ashes series a few times. If he fails, it's not, a disaster, and it's really a short term. It's a for now pick. I can understand looking at number 5. Travis Head offers, in theory, a lot more upside than someone like Khawaja. If it works, then it's like a problem solved for a long time. At the top of the order, Australia know they only need somebody. Well, assuming Will Pukowski does recover, they're thinking 5 tests, get us through the Ashes, then we're going to give the place to Pukowski. Yeah. I don't know. That's that. And then on the bowling front, just to touch on that really, really quickly, I think all of their pace bowlers will play tests at different points. I think they've gone with Stark. I mean, in cricket, people love an incumbent, don't they? Until the incumbent does something wrong, then even if until they do it wrong over and over again, they'll retain their place in the side. People tend not to be too reflexive in terms of making changes, but I do think I'd be surprised if Jai Richardson isn't in for the second test for one of the Australian fast bowlers, because it's like 3 days later, isn't it?
I mean,
the
Pat Cummins and
Hazelwood.
Pat Cummins and Hazelwood, I feel like a gold dust. So I feel like they're nailed on in Test cricket. They're just nailed on nowadays. So. Sure. If it would be, it probably would be Stark, wouldn't it? But yeah, it's a weird one because, Stark, I've actually got it here. It's 96 is his average, just under 97. But he's only, we say that, but he's only played 2 tests in 2021. So it's a very small sample size, to be fair, to him as well. But yeah, like Jai Richardson is one for the future, but it'd be weird not to go with Stark first up and see how he goes. I mean, for Australia, I'm assuming the keys for them are just going to be Smith, Labuschagne, and then just absolutely skittling and right with the ball. With Cummins and Hazelwood will be the real keys in line if you can tie down an end.
That's what they'll be hoping to do. I think they probably need somebody else to step up a little bit. Against India last year, or earlier this year even, whenever it was, against India.
Yeah.
It was very noticeable how much they depended on those 2 guys to keep them in the game. Now, if you're going to depend on anyone, Labuschagne and Smith are like right up the top of the list. But I think they'll be disappointed that somebody like Cameron Green didn't score against India. That I know Warner was injured, but it didn't affect the game when he came in. And Travis Head, I think it's an interesting series for a few of those guys. I think Australia to win will need somebody else to score runs. And it might be a different guy in each test. They might get 100 out of Warner once, and they might get a nice 85 off Cameron Green in another. But they're going to need somebody filling in the gaps. They can't expect Smith and Labuschagne to average 100 for the whole series. I mean, it'd be nice for them if it happened, and it might happen. It's happened before, but I think they'll need a little bit more in the back front. I think where they've got an advantage over England, though, is that I think there are more candidates who are more likely to have one of those series.
Yeah.
Warner at home. It's very different to playing at Headingley in England, isn't it? I'd expect him to be quite scary from an England point of view at the series.
I mean, Khawaja's not on the side, right? He averages 40, so that would be the second highest average in the England side. So that kind of
Exactly.
like, that's kind of makes the difference, right? I feel like, and he's really good at home. But yeah, I agree with you. I feel like Australia, they'll have to take turns. Someone needs to get some runs. They're playing at home as well, so the ball's not going to nip around as much. Anderson's not going to be able to. Well, we'll see. But as you said, the first whatever 6, 7, 8 overs, he would definitely get it to move around a little bit. But then after that, it's just so dead, that Kookaburra ball, and it is just about who can hit the pitch hard, who can be creative with it, and actually get the ball to do something which isn't, something that the Duke's ball would end up doing for about 20 overs. So it's definitely a very different ball game, and it'll be interesting to see if Jack Leach can bowl with overspin, because that's something that Nathan Lyon's perfected in Australia, bowling with overspin, that dip, knowing that it's not going to turn a lot and grip, but knowing that I can bowl, I can just see the bats of the overspin. Not quite sure I've seen Leach bowl overspin with overspin even in a test match before, but spinners do bowl differently in different conditions, obviously. So if he can, he'll have success for sure.
I think he's talked about practicing it, hasn't he? In the last couple of weeks. So, and I like that. Now we might not have like a load of Jack Leach footage of him bowling with overspin, but the fact that he is aware that that's what he needs to do and is practicing doing that, I think speaks to somebody who is detail oriented and puts effort into their game and understands the sport that they're trying to master. So fingers crossed from that point of view. I really like Leach. I think it'd be great if he had a good series.
That seems like a nice bloke. Yeah, can't disagree with you there. And then lastly, then the fifth test obviously moved from Perth because I think issues with potential the new variant and all sorts and stuff going on. Where do you think it's going to be held? Just as a random.
I have no idea. What are the options?
I've got a few. I
It's
think Melbourne's
Tasmania.
in there. Yeah. So I think Melbourne's one of them. They've got Sydney, Canberra, and Hobart.
I would, if possible, I'd go. Do they play AFL at Hobart's? Hobart Cricket Stadium. Yeah. Oh, okay. So I was to try and keep it off the drop-in pitches because some of them can be absolutely stultifyingly boring. Do you remember the last series where Alistair Cook batted for about 4 days to draw the MCG? Just a terrible cricket match. If we can avoid that, it'd be good. I think the SCG is maybe not a drop-in, but it's not. I think it's a bit of a shame that there won't be a Perth test. I feel like I think it's the place where Bairstow got his 100, and I think Stokes has maybe got 100 there as well. So looking at this England side, who has 100 in Australia? Oh, Milan has 100 in Perth as well.
Yeah,
so it's the only place England can score runs. We're not playing anymore, which is
very convenient. No, I agree. I'm going to go, if the weather obviously hopefully holds up, then I'll go 3-1 Australia. But yeah, I don't know. It might be closer. I think England will need to step up, and if they can, you never know. It's going to be a tough ask, no doubt. But there's some guys who are a little bit green, which means that you never know. They might step up and grab it with both hands, the opportunity. And, who knows? You get off to a good start, even grab a draw in that first game, and that then plants seeds of doubt into the Australian minds and gives gives the guys from England and you guys a big push straight away, I think.
Yeah, and the final thing I'd say is that the fact Australia haven't played any Test cricket really, or only a very small amount of Test cricket over the last sort of 18 months, is probably good for England as well, because you don't know whether some of these players have declined. Maybe Mitchell Starc just isn't that good at Test cricket anymore. That's a possibility. Maybe David Warner can't do it in Test cricket anymore. We don't really know some of these things because it hasn't been tested because Australia haven't played. So that's another area England might get lucky. I mean, at least England have got a rough idea that none of their players are completely dropping off a cliff. Now, Australia could turn up, and they're carrying guys that just aren't that good anymore. But I think you're clutching at straws a little bit from an England point of view if that's what you're hoping for.
Yeah, it's true. Obviously, with that surprise T20 win as well, some of the guys from there are playing in this. I'm sure they'll take a little bit from that. It's a completely different format, but I'm sure that will help their morale and It's definitely helped Justin Langer keep his job, that's for sure. To wrap up, then, is there anything you want to touch upon before we wrap up?
No, that's it. Just a reminder for people who are watching and listening, if you've enjoyed me prattling on for 50 minutes, we're doing a daily show. So after the end of each day's play, we'll do a little recap show, and you can find that on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, the Cricket Podcast. It's a little blue logo with some pads on. Or find us on Twitter at the Cricket Pod, or find me on Twitter at JackHope0. So there you go. I plugged everything. Now
Did my job for me.
Yeah, come along. We're really looking forward to it. We should have some good guests on. I'm sure the cricket will be pretty good fun. Even if it is an annihilation, it'll be funny.
It'll be a quality annihilation at least. I agree. Yeah, and thanks for doing my job for me. But yeah, guys, please do go check out the Cricket Podcast if you haven't already. I'm sure you have. But as Jack said, they've got some fantastic guests on there. And as I said, if you're a cricket fan, you need to go and check it out because it's definitely worth dialing into. And daily shows sound fantastic after the day's play, especially if England are getting battered. Then you might see them really emotional after the day's play. So I'm sure they will be. That's all from me. Thank you very much, guys, for tuning in. Please remember to smash the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And as I said, do go and check out the Cricket Podcast. And I will see you guys later. Thank you very much.